last round of our sessions on the policy cycle. Take a seat, ideally in the front rows, because this is not a plenary session. We're trying to have a little intimate, interactive session. So please come a little bit more to the front.
Still a lot of noise outside, so many people are still in a coffee break.
Well, even if people are sitting in front of us, I'm totally blinded by the light. Okay, so welcome again. This is the session on policy design. We're looking into the part of the policy cycle where we inform policymaking, and our session is on evidence-based and inclusive decision-making models. My name is Katharina Krell. I'm a thematic expert with the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform, and my thematic focus areas are greener Europe, energy and mobility, and more connected Europe, so more about mobility. And I will be your moderator for this session. The aim of the session is to shine light into the different parts of the policy cycle that you have already discovered. Probably you have already joined other sessions. So in this session, we're looking at policy design and what can inform policy design. And of course, policies should be based on something tangible, on data, and there should not be made on emotions. So we're looking into the way how decision-making models can influence mobility policy making. And well, we're having one keynote speaker, which I'm going to introduce in a minute. But while you're getting settled, maybe we can get to know the audience a little better to see who's in the room. And you already know the Slido drill. So let's build a word cloud and tell us who we are in the audience. It's really useful for Maria and myself to know who's in the room so that we can make our presentation as relevant to you as possible. So let's see. Ukraine, welcome. Estonia, Germany. Two from Estonia. Portugal, Greece, France, Netherlands, more from Portugal, the Netherlands, Hungary, Belgium. Okay. Estonia is leading, so you see how a small country can make a big impact. All right, but maybe even more importantly, we are also curious to see where you're from, what kind of organizations you're working at. And so are you more on the administration side? Are you in academia, science and research, any agencies? Are you from the NGO sector? As expected, the majority from local, regional, and national administration, so we have the right target group here. Okay, great. And maybe the most useful question for us, are you dealing with mobility policy in your job? Yes. I mostly deal with mobility policy, or I deal with mobility occasionally, or no, my job actually is mainly on other topics. Let's see how mobility savvy our audience is. That will give us an idea of how familiar they are with the decision-making models, right? Okay, so the majority is not focusing on mobility as a main topic in their job, 43%. Okay, 19% mobility professionals and 35 occasionally dealing with mobility.
Okay.
Good mix.
Good mix.
All right. So, but of course, at the policy learning platform, we're dealing with mobility a lot. I mean, we deal with all the topics, but mobility is a very popular topic amongst our projects, and the platform is exploiting this as well. So here is just a glimpse of what we've done in the area of mobility only last year. So we worked on demand-responsive transport, on the impact of urban logistics, shared mobility, providing good transport for rural areas, active mobility, walking and cycling, and again, sharing assets. I think this is a very hot and trending topic. So, and a part of that, dozens and dozens of good practices that you can find all in our good practice database. So plenty of resources where to start your policy journey from. But today, let's look at the particular case of decision-making models for transport policy design. So typically, when there is a new transport project coming up, well, usually there are alternatives that have to be weighed against each other. And how should the policymakers decide into which, let's say, option to invest the money, which is always limited, which transport option to choose out of several possible alternatives. And the typical traditional way to assess this is a cost-benefit analysis. And the projects are usually selected according to what is the best value for money. But there are also parameters that are difficult to measure in monetary terms, like clean air or noise pollution. So it's very difficult to put a monetary tag on it, or people, citizens' preferences. And so we've seen recently new types of decision-making models emerging that take into account these other parameters as well. And so we're going to look into one, and Maria Morfolaki is going to introduce one of these to us. So Dr. Maria Morfolaki is a scientist, and she's also the head of the Sustainable Transport Lab at CERT. That's Center for Technology, Research and Technology from Greece. She's based in Thessaloniki, and she's also a very good expert on SUMPs. SUMPs are Sustainable Urban Mobility Plans, the most important planning document in the transport area. And the floor is yours to present us.
Thank you very much, Katerina. I will use this. Thank you very much, all of you, for being here with us. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present our good practices. A good practice coming from Thessaloniki, the place where our premises of the Hellenic Institute, our main premises are. And presenting you a good practice of, let's say, an old practice in transportation planning, the four-step model for strategic decision making. For some of you, this will be something that you are familiar, because you know four-step models and traffic models are here for more than 20 or 30 years. I have to admit that that was the starting point of my career some years before. I won't say how many years, but yes, that was the starting point with the four-step model of Thessaloniki. So I'm really very enthusiastic about all this domain of simulation and transport modeling that I will try also to explain to you. First of all, I think I have to explain a little bit what is this transport model of four-step. It's a very classic, let's say, model in the transportation planning domain. Of course, a transport model, as you know, is a simulation, a representation of the real-world transport system. And why is it useful? Because it allows to all of us, all the people who are dealing with planning the transport, let's say, domain, the transport, and wants to analyze a little bit the impact of the different transport infrastructure or new measures. We really we should have something that it will allow us to make the to see the differences of what if I do this or if I do that, and also to test alternative scenarios. So this is what is the main let's say target of a transportation model. Now, what about the 4 steps? Okay, the 4 steps are also one of the very classic, let's say, theories and models. This is, I'm quite sure that many of you are also familiar with those steps. The first step is to calculate what are the trips that are generated, produced, or attracted by a specific area of, let's say, of a city. Let's go for a city, which is something that more or less the study area for most of our plans. So we have a city, and we divide this city into separate neighborhoods. Every neighborhood for us, it's a transportation, in the transportation, let's say, planning, is a zone, okay? And in the spatial planning also. So let's say that we divide our area in different zones, and for each one of these, of each neighborhoods, we want to calculate how many, as a first step, how many trips are generated there, and how many trips are attracted from the specific zones. This is the first step of our planning process. The second step, okay, we know that, let's say, in the zone 1, we have 1,000 of trips that are generated, okay, but then all these people that are traveling, what is their final destination? So I have to allocate all these trips that are generated somewhere to the final destination. Here, in this procedure, in the trips distribution procedure, as a final result, you have the matrix with all the trips that are going from one zone to another zone. Step number 3, very crucial step for us, especially now with the sustainable planning, to be one of the target or the most important target. Please shift all the people from the car to the public transport and the other sustainable means of transport. So in this step, there are specific algorithms that calculate what are the different parameters that influence the decision of the choice that the people will make of how they travel from one zone to another. Okay, so we have the current situation. If I ask, let's say, my neighbor, she will tell me that, okay, I use the car going from my home to work, but I have to figure out why. What are the parameters that make this person to decide to take the car? And of course, after I have the matrices, the tables for each one from zone to zone by what mean of transport they travel, then I assigned everything as a 4th and last step to the network that I have simulated. Let's go to this simulation, which is something that it's not easy, of course. I will not say that it's an easy procedure, but you know that we have a lot of tools now to create these GIS, let's say, networks. In Thessaloniki, we have created in the metropolitan area level, divided, as you see, in 284 zones. Then we have Thessaloniki Metropolitan Unit, which also includes some more municipalities, an extended, I can say, area. Sorry, just a moment, okay. Which has 303 zones, and of course, there are some other zones for the trips that are attracted by the external area, the areas outside our study area. So in total, we have almost 350 zones in the specific, for the specific Thessaloniki transport model. Now, as you can understand, okay, there are the zones, and then I will first present you this slide. You have to simulate the road network, okay, because everything that you will test, it has to do with the network. What shall I do in order to make it more attractive to the people, but not by car, but by other modes of transport, etc. So, in Thessaloniki, this is my example, but of course you can imagine that the same procedure for all the other cities. We have a huge amount of nodes and links, so you have to simulate, to draw, let's say, all the networks, all the roads with the different nodes that it has, with the traffic lights. And when we say links, and we mean the different parts of the network, of the road, you need to include there all the road characteristics. Okay, so how many lanes, what is the direction, if there are specific bus lanes, if there are bike lanes, everything should be there. And what is, how you use this network, this supply road network, when you want to test a different scenario, as you will see in these sketches, in these pictures. You consultate with the different stakeholders, and you decide that, okay, this part of the network should be changed, should be modified. Let's close 1, 2, 3 lanes. Let's give space to the people who are walking, to people who are biking, and you create the different scenarios. The same also is, and very crucial when we are speaking about sustainable mobility planning, the same also is for the public transport network simulation. So when we simulate the public transport network, we have also to have a very close collaboration with the operators, with all the people and all the stakeholders that knows very well the characteristics of this network, in order to map and to simulate all the lines with the different operational characteristics. And then when we got all the supply and demand data from the different stakeholders, we are also consulted with them in order to create different scenarios of different cases of how to upgrade, let's say, the public transport operation in Thessaloniki, let's say, very recently, and we are very proud for this. We have the operation of our new metro line. There were many tested scenarios like this of where should I, let's say, plan this and design this metro line, and what is the extension that should also include there, etc., the operational characteristics, and all of them were tested through this model of Thessaloniki. Of course, as you understand, in Thessaloniki, in all these traffic models, you need the demand, the mobility data, which is not something that you can find easily, because the supply data, okay, the network is there. There should be some studies. There should be GIS, let's say, databases. You can have this data somehow. You will need some surveys, but in most of the cases, there are not so many as there are for capturing what is the demand. So you need mobility surveys with questionnaires in order to capture what are the trips, daily trips of the citizens, stated preference in order to understand why and under what parameters they select the mode that they will use. Volume counts in order to understand what are the current situation of the traffic in the different parts of your network. Of course, you have in Thessaloniki all of these. We calculate everything with mobility surveys, historical data with detectors installed in the network for traffic flow and travel times, and also a very close cooperation with taxi fleet. From this cooperation, we receive real-time traffic flows and speeds every day, and this, of course, is a very useful data. Thank you for calculating how close I am with this network to the real situation. So I think that now that more or less you have understand what is this four-step model of Thessaloniki, I will just briefly present you three cases that we really used this model. Of course, one of these is the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, where when we simulated all the different scenarios. I'm quite sure that we are all very much familiar with simulation with sustainable urban mobility plans. You know that is a co-design and co-create procedure. You want to see the impact, to share these results with the stakeholders, and to choose what is the best for the city. That was exactly the road of the 6 different scenarios that tested, and finally for choosing the ones that are part of the plan, the Sustainable Mobility Plan of the city. The second example comes from the need to test fleet scenarios for estimated the operation of the electric bus fleet, how many that there was an installation of specific electric bus fleet in Thessaloniki, and also with charging depots, etc. So as you can understand, this modified the operational characteristic of specific lines. So we tested different scenarios in order to conclude with these 100 electric buses and how they will be used. And finally, something which is running, and it's part of our everyday life in Thessaloniki. It's the flyover construction over the ring road of Thessaloniki, construction that minimized a lot the capacity of our ring road. As you can understand, it caused a lot of problems in the traffic, in the everyday traffic circumstances in the network, and we try to run some scenarios and to see what is the critical network that should be used, and how, in order to minimize all these effects during the construction period. And of course, this is something that we updated every day, I can say, during the data, using the data that we receive from the different devices. So very quickly, that was our model. I'm quite sure that there will be a lot of questions. So we're here for your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Yes, my colleague Simon is having a microphone in case anybody in the audience wants to ask a question. So just raise your hand and Simon will bring you the mic. There's already one. Just tell us where you're from before you ask your question, please.
Yeah, we already know us, but you can see me for the light. I'm David from Saarland. It's a small region in Germany. I'm working there in the mobility department of the of the Ministry for Environment, and we already had a peer review to the theme, to the topic of demand responsive transport. That's why I know Katharina. My question is, or actually, thank you very much. I have a lot of questions actually. The first one is, so at which intervals do you update your model? And the second question is, which modes of transport are included? So for example, do you include demand responsive transport or like micro mobility like the e-scooters? And the third question, so can you give any examples for the KPIs that derive from this model? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the update of the model is an issue, as you know, but we are very lucky because we have a lot of sources, and this gives us the opportunity to update the model, at least for the basic characteristics, every 3 or 4 years. In case we need something to run and we need an update, we also organize specific surveys for that. As regards the modes, of course, this is a typical, let's say, forced model in Visum. As you know, there are many add-ons in Visum in order to run scenarios with micromobility options, etc. We have included, of course, public transport with metro bus lines and bikes and walking. But for micromobility, we are now working in an add-on in order to include it. I have to say, I'm not very happy with that in Thessaloniki still things with bikes and micromobility are not in a very high demand. Now that together with the metro line, we hope that this will change. We are trying to simulate also these modes. And as regards the KPIs, you know again that these models have a very specific library of KPIs, but except that, the environmental CO2 capacity, VOC, we also try to calculate some KPIs regarding societal, let's say, aspects. Who are the people who are easily moving from their private car to metro, etc.
These were already very educated questions. I see the expert background. Simon, there's more, please.
Hi,
Hello.
This is Mariano from Friends of the Earth, Mallorca, Spain. Thanks for your presentation. I was wondering, I remember that I read that the mobility experts in Zurich, in Switzerland, they are proud of saying that the main job they have is making drivers' life difficult. What do you think about this statement? Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You know, as I already mentioned, I have started my career with these models. Back then, what we tried to do is to give road lanes and capacity in order to minimize the travel times by car. That was my starting point. Everything has changed now. Exactly the planning and the way that we set up the different scenarios as exactly what you mentioned. We want to make the lives of the drivers difficult and to give them less space and to give more space to public transport as first target, and then biking, walking, scooters, etc. For me, I can say that it's not the users of e-cars is not also a priority. It's not, because they also need space. No, for this planning, yes, it's first the public transport.
Well, you can also phrase it in a less antagonistic way and say, not your priority is to make the life of car drivers as miserable as possible,
Yep.
but to make it as easy and comfortable and
Yes.
fun to use active modes of mobility and
Exactly.
public transport.
Yes, and for me, public transport comes first because if you want to give equal access, you know, for many people, bike is not an opportunity. Okay.
Are there other questions in the room? There's one.
If I may, when you think of scenarios for transport, it's also important to relate them to policy objectives, like what economic development do you foresee, where do you foresee development of housing, all of these different policy agendas. I was wondering, you presented different delineation of metropolitan areas. Are these purely analytical, or are there also governance levels to ensure this alignment of transport planning and all the different policy dimensions? Do you have an assembly of elected representatives or stakeholders that also intervene at metropolitan level, and how is that structured?
Thank you. Yes. As you know, as this is a main tool for sustainable urban mobility planning, you know that there, the team that is working is mainly composed by transport engineers, but also people from the urban planning, spatial planning, the economical, let's say, the financial domain in general. There are many companies as regards how we can set up public-private cooperation to the different, let's say, setups of micromobility companies, etc. There are also a lot of a big conversation about the spatial planning in Thessaloniki, because, you know, when you want to promote bike or public transport, you have to stop, build and expand your city in areas where they cannot have access on that. So yes, everyone is part of this model and of this conversation.
Maybe as a follow-up question on that, who is seeing the results of this model? I mean, there are to inform public decisions on transport projects. So you must discuss different alternatives. And who typically are the people who see the results? And can they use the model independently, or do you, as an academic institution who is curating the model, accompany them in the journey?
Look, this model is a demandful tool, I can say. Okay, so if an organization, an authority, a stakeholder wants to use this model, of course they can. They can have access, free access, and use it. Most of the times, they're coming to us because it needs an expertise that it's not very easy to be developed, etc. But we have some stakeholders in Thessaloniki that we share, let's say, data, and we share models, okay? So this data is available to everyone who will use it for testing their scenarios for specific, let's say, purposes. If they can use it themselves, it's fine. Okay, there is an open, let's say, access in most of these tools. But if they need our support, we also offer, as it seems, the support on this. Now, as regards the results are through the Living Lab that we have and we host in CERT, in the Hellenic Institute of Transport. The results are available to everyone. Open. So yes, they can use it as they wish.
But for instance, in the development of the SAMP, or the example that you have shown in procuring e-fleets for e-buses, with whom are you sitting together? You're sitting together with
the operators, with the city stakeholders, with the people, let's say, from the construction of the flyover, with the ministry, because flyover is funded by the ministry, sometimes with citizens, that they want very much to be part of this, because when we introduced flyover and in this critical network, there was very many decisions that we have to, let's say, remove some bike lanes in order to give space to public transport, etc. So there was a dialogue with the citizens, with everyone who is really has something to say and to offer in this conversation.
Okay. You mentioned the citizens, which have a specific interest in seeing the results, but you also mentioned before that you systematically collect citizen preferences. How exactly do you go about, and how do you make sure this is representative? What tools do you use to gather this input?
Okay, there are the big amount of data for the first step, let's say, of this procedure comes from very dedicated surveys when you have to go to the citizens, not to the group of citizens, to the citizens, door to door, ask them for their daily habits, okay, as regards the transport, their mobility. Afterwards, we receive a lot of data from mobile phones, from daily trips of bikes, of public transport, etc. And we try to organize also some open, let's say, surveys through internet, through web, in order to collect the data. But still, when we want to update, let's say now that we will need to update it and see how the first year, let's say, of metro line went, we should go back door to door. Yeah.
Oh, this is very time intense.
Yeah,
so
but
I see.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, good quality takes a lot of effort.
And it's the communication with the people. They really, I think that they really see that you need their data, their habits, their opinion. And it's a very good opportunity to speak to them of something has changed, please use it. Please change your habits.
Yes, every time that you consult a citizen, it's a way to communicate and to raise awareness at the same time.
Yes.
I would like to see a little bit how familiar our audience is with decision-taking models. So we kept the question general. We didn't specify if it's decision-making models for mobility, because you are a mixed audience. Maybe tell us a little bit through the Slido, do you use decision-making models to plan important projects in your region? Yes, 50%. I'm not sure, 42%. Okay, so...
okay. Half of the audience has...
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anybody who would like to share with us their experience in using decision-taking models to inform the decisions on important projects? Anybody who's been involved in the planning of an important project in the area of mobility or else, where you were assessing different scenarios? Yes.
Yeah, me again. Yeah, we use like this classical model with PTV Visum as well, but yeah, as you said, it's really difficult to handle, and so in the ministry and even in some planning institutions, we have like not a lot of persons who have the knowledge. And so that's why last time we took like other instruments. Of course, there are like a new planning industry rised up. They are working more with AI models, and they are using like more this mobile phone data or tracking data from different apps and make like really precise prognosis as well. So I think it's like really interesting, and some of them offer like tools, they are like a little bit easier to handle. But for an example, for the demand responsive transport, we also use the model like this, and yeah, there is like a big survey in Germany that comes out every 5 years. That's shows the demands of mobility needs of the people, and also shows the reality, how they are traveling. And so we ordered like a model that shows us, based to our main railroads, where is like a big potential in the main stations where people have a good train connection actually, but there's like a rural area and they have not the possibility to reach this train station. So yeah, this first mile topic. And so we identified some areas in our region. They have like a really high potential to rise up the potential of this bus stops or train stops. And so we took on this space the decision where we make like a funding for demand responsive transport. So this is an example how you can use these models, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you for sharing. This is an excellent example where you then see where you can build at the main public transport stop an intermodal hub for onward transport to serve the hinterland and to act as a feeder for this public transport line. Thank you. Maybe a question about cost. You've mentioned it's resource intensive to build and to maintain and to use such a model. Which parameter do you think is the most important to collect, and which one is the most cheapest to integrate?
Okay. I think that you can have a very good result if, as a city or as a region, create, let's say, a procedure that will be step and say that every 2 years I will go through a web survey, okay, back to my citizens. I will disseminate this as a very good opportunity to hear your voice. You can collect, I think, a very huge and important amount of data without any cost. And this can make you really have a tool that will be updated every 2 or 3 years. From the other hand, I feel that it's very crucial for the authorities to look and create a very good link with the research organization and their universities, because I'm quite sure that almost all of them, they will have such tools because we are using them in our research, and also the universities are using them for their academic reasons. And through this collaboration, you can also have an updated model that you can also use without major costs, and yes, and also find some money to open a tender, etc. So I think that, yes, there are alternatives without having to spend a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you mentioned the periodic update. Mm-hmm. So we have been talking about the policy cycle. So here is a session on policy design, but there you actually see the full circle.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Because
yes.
First you model to inform the policy design, then you implement the measure, and later on you use the same parameters, KPIs,
exactly.
and data sources to assess the impact, and then you fine-tune the policy, and by that we create a full circle.
Yes, and another circle, because things are changing very quickly nowadays in our lives, in our cities.
yes, and our policies don't follow quickly enough, and our infrastructure projects even slower.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
we need to adapt faster.
Exactly.
And I think these evidence-based and integrative decision-making tools are excellent things to integrate in everyday policy making. It's time to draw the conclusions from this session. This is already the first one. The tools are really useful.
Absolutely.
They are resource intensive and skill intensive, so the collaboration between public policy makers, administrations, and research academia is useful because academia develops such tools for their own research anyway, so much more worthwhile to use it for a real life project. There are some quick wins. Especially if data can be collected with internet online surveys that are institutionalized. They should be repetitive and regularly feeding back to reinforce the model and the policy.
Open dialogue with citizens.
And the models are, every time citizens are asked for input, it's an occasion to communicate and to raise their awareness and to onboard them for changes.
Exactly.
Help me out here.
What we forgot. They don't remember anything else?
Have I forgotten anything? Have you got any super main takeaway from the session that I forgot to mention? Here is your possibility to raise your hand or be silent forever. Well,
And plan for the people, not for the cars. Okay.
oh yes, and communicate it in a smart way so as not to antagonize anybody. Okay, so I thank you very much for being with us in this final session of the day. And I would say a big applause to Dr. Maria Mafulaki.
Thank you. Please, I would like just to mention my colleague Maria Hadjiathanasiou, who is running now the model, and she couldn't be with us. Okay. So, yeah, I have to mention her also.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. We have much more coming up after this session, but it's a surprise, I think, at 5 o'clock back here in the plenary. Thank you.
Thank you, Katerina. Thank you all.